The dynamics of group work. Throughout the semester, the task given to a group was to create a functional product that filled a gap in the educational market. While there were many aspects that I personally learned about, none other seemed more important than the dynamics of group work that I encountered. As teachers, we're taught about the benefits of group work and can see them for ourselves, not only in helping with time constraints, but enforcing and closing the gap of Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. We're even explicitly taught how to properly conduct group work, whereas it perplexed me in this circumstance that we still can't get it completely right and functioning. This is why I'd like to investigate this further, get some outside opinion and research as to how to ameliorate this issue and use these techniques to my and the students' advantage in the classroom. Given that our product of Reviser Brain, a game specifically testing revision techniques, relies heavily on group participation, I feel that this is a good time to tie in the relationship between product and practice. Currently, it is understood that the power of group work and its benefits will most likely far outweigh the negatives, as it lowers the zone of proximal development, making other students the more knowledgeable other. This provides a scaffolding effect in which students can help each other and make the teacher a facilitator of learning. While great in theory, in my previous placements I've found it doesn't always work. Students need to be challenged and given roles to fulfill. A truly collaborative classroom will ensure that each student has something that they must achieve. Group work has long been seen as beneficial to educators and students alike, which indeed is indisputable. Especially when learning new topics, it is easy to see the merit in decreasing the zone of proximal development. According to Davies, group work encourages deep as opposed to surface learning, that is, a deep-seated intercontextual and interpersonal development structure that relies on metacognition and veritably enforces teamwork. It also encourages active as opposed to passive learning. This again deviates from the older methodology that the student as a tabula rasa, where the teacher dictates everything from the front of the classroom. It enforces students as the centre of their learning and encourages metacognitive processes, learning about how they learn best and playing on the student's innate ability and desire to learn. Group work also promotes experiential learning and collaboration with peers. Finally, it promotes enhancement of problem-based learning, identifying problems, where for us it was identifying a gap, and working together to solve said problem. From what Davies depicted as the successes of group work, in my experience there are equal amounts of unsuccessfulness. Specifically from this experience, identifying our problem is difficult. It was evidently hard to work as a cohesive unit, and clear leaders became apparent. Therefore, it is imperative to investigate this instance and understand why everything didn't work cohesively as expected. As previously stated, there were clear leaders that emerged and seemed more invested in the work than other parties. This isn't to say that the other parties did less work. The emergence of leaders can often be difficult. Looking at it from another perspective, leaders can often throw the workload and interest out of balance. In effect, to borrow from Churchill et al., we worked in a group, but not as a group. Was motivation an issue? Too many leaders? The idea of groupthink? Or maybe personal factors? Motivation. Intrinsic and extrinsic motivational factors always attribute to the work produced. However, it could be seen that the task administered was designed to be engaging and open-ended, albeit fun to create. Intrinsic motivation is a self-inflicted technique to want to do well, not only for yourself, but also for the group. It often allows for small forms of altruism and autonomic behaviour, for example, doing more work. Davies suggests that this form of motivation is often the most difficult to control based on the form of the task. I would argue that the task in question was designed to promote intrinsic motivation, as it was largely autonomous and our group members collectively came up with the idea of a board game. Alternatively, there lies extrinsic motivation, or more specifically, grades. The work of Decci has investigated that an overfocus on the outcome or extrinsic factors can over-justify intrinsic motivators. Equity issues. The task administered was open-ended and left to the students to decide what to do with it. Therefore, it relied not only on creating a well-rounded product, but our reliability and conscientiousness as teachers. The issue surrounding equity was unfortunately accountability. Tying into motivation, sufficient equity wasn't taken as members didn't feel a sense of accountability for actions, or what Davies aptly named the sucker effect. Lack of communication would have also played a large part in this. Davies suggests that group members will generally shy away from confrontation with other members to not break out of the group mentality. It was evident in our group, myself included, that we did shy away from confrontation and often made up excuses to remain non-confrontational. Reflecting on the experience, perhaps it would have been simpler to tell the group members how we were feeling and what needed to be done. In future endeavours, I would conduct our group work much differently. First of all, planning would be a key factor that I think the group should implement. Given that there will be some leaders, myself included, the group should firstly decide on a product collaboratively, as we did to begin with. Moving on from there, create a timeline or a table of what needs to be accomplished and by when, so the stresses of the group didn't affect everyone. Lastly, delegating and agreeing on roles at the beginning, understanding what each member has to do and by when, so that more time can be spent on equality and the quality of the task. Giving a role and an outcome for each person in the group so that everyone is involved equally and collaboratively. I would change the speaking dynamics to be more open and being able to provide constructive criticisms and qualms when due. Secondly, as in this task, making group work targets as explicit as possible, but also leaving the way to achieve outcomes as open-ended and autonomous as possible. This is a real positive to take out of this experience. The task was rich and required the team to work together to achieve a common goal that we set for ourselves. What I would change is being able to identify which member of the team did what in the group task. If one member completed higher order thinking tasks and plans, where the other team member finished creative projects. This is applicable in general school contexts, factoring in rubric areas for effort. I think that this would benefit students that do put in the effort, but also provide intrinsic motivation to students that might not necessarily try as hard. It may encourage these students to see that they get marked on their effort or devotion to a given task.
So cold,